All right, what's going on, everybody? My name is Alex Mate. I'm a freshman rep on the SBA.
And I am Alex Morrison. I'm a freshman rep at
Yes.
SBA as well.
We are both named Alex, and today we are here on the SBA podcast to do an episode on the 2025 NFL Draft, which we are very excited for. It's in just about 2 weeks or so, and there's a whole lot of things that can be happening. So we're gonna do a mock draft live, compare both of our notes, talk about what teams can kind of do. And yeah, it's going to be great. So we have a simulator set up here. We're going to go ahead and get started. And number one pick, who do you think the Titans go with? I think it's pretty consensus.
I think Cam Ward is obviously. I mean, I wouldn't say he's the best player in this draft, but he's definitely the best fit for the Titans. They need a quarterback. He's the best quarterback in the draft. He's used to leading a team. He led Miami all the way to the college football playoff, or almost to the college football playoff this season. I think he works perfectly there.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think he's not the best prospect in the class by any means, but I think as a quarterback, he's solidly the best prospect there is to take. I think he goes solidly at one.
And I mean, I think as we go through these top four, there's a pretty dead set top four guys that go.
Yeah.
And these top four teams are definitely all in need of someone to pick.
So we're going with Cam Ward, number one overall, and then we have the Browns. And there's a couple different ways they could go here. So at this spot, there is Abdul Carter, who many consider a generational pass rushing prospect. He is very, very fantastic. He was great at Penn, super productive at Penn State. There's also dual threat Travis Hunter, but there's also talks about Shedeur Sanders. There's a certain way I'm leaning. What are you thinking?
Well, I think the number one priority for the Browns is obviously if Cam Ward falls to them, they're picking Cam Ward. I think they've had introductory talks with them, introductory talks with him already. I don't think he's going there. I would say the most dominant player in college football last season, if you ask me, is Abdul Carter. He's still probably the best player in this draft class. And, I mean, they have Myles Garrett locked up for I don't know how many years, forever. Having those two edge rushers, most likely on opposite sides, is going to be dangerous for their defense, and they're going to have that for years and years to come. So.
I have some big if on Cam Ward, but I think for the Browns, they did recently admit their mistake with Deshaun Watson. I think they're ready to move on from him, but I don't think they pass up Abdul Carter here. If they want to appear like a winning franchise, I think you can't pass up on him.
Yeah, only if Cam Ward falls to them.
Big if.
Big if. I don't think the Titans are going any other way. I couldn't see that at all. Usually the number one pick is pretty consensus. This year, honestly, in comparison to previous years, isn't as like clear cut of a number one overall pick. They weren't tanking for Cam Ward.
It's definitely not, but I don't think there's a chance Cam Ward escapes the top two.
Yeah, it's more about fit this year, which I like a lot better.
That's great. Yeah, we're gonna go with Abdul Carter here, and then something very, very interesting spot here, as Alex next to me is a Patriots fan, and obviously he'd like for Travis Hunter to fall, but Giants right here have Travis Hunter available. They could go offensive line. There are some other interesting threats available. Ashton Genty. Armand Membao is a great tackle out of Missouri. What are you thinking here?
Well, I wouldn't really want my personal biases to slip in here. However, I'm really hoping that this eventuality happens, that, you know, maybe the Giants aren't necessarily looking for someone like Travis Hunter. You know, if you look at their team needs, we're doing this mock draft on Pro Football Sports Network. Yeah. If you look at their team needs, they haven't been like defensive focused. They're really looking for someone on the offense, which, I mean, they always could bring up the eventuality of them trading something away in the next 2 weeks. Probably not going to happen. I think they're probably looking more offensive. That's just my take. I'd be fine if they selected someone like Travis Hunter. Obviously, he's the best guy on the board. So it just depends on who the Giants take. Obviously, the front office hasn't always been super consistent. I don't know if you see the Hard Knocks clip of them from last year, but
I've seen many. I believe I've been relishing. Relishing his mistakes as an Eagles fan.
There's been something about these New York teams and asking their kids about franchise decisions. So,
well, I hope he asks his kids about this one, because I think Travis Hunter at 3 is a lock.
Yeah,
I think that's very.
I would say it may be more likely for them to pick Will Campbell, but I could see it going either way. I have like little arrows in my little mock draft here of them possibly switching either way. So I think Travis Hunter, they'll pick the best guy on the board. Yeah. They'll pick the guy who fits for them.
I think they'll go. I mean, of all the teams in the league, this is really one of the main ones that have glaring needs at receiver and corner. It fits too well. And as bad as Joe Shane has been, if he asks his kids who to pick here, I think they'll give him the right decision.
I think they'll say Travis Hunter too, based on all the social media stuff.
And then we lead to the Patriots. I'm gonna let you take this one. Talk about your needs and talk about what you'd like them to do here.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of needs, there are a lot of them. Obviously, going into the season, we have a lot of team needs at offensive line, and there are two offensive linemen who are the best available right now, which would be not. I wouldn't say ideal as someone who wants like an exciting player like Travis Hunter, but ideal. I'd say us and the Bears came into this offseason with a similar team needs. They also needed offensive line, and they signed 3 offensive linemen. We didn't, and we lost David Andrews, who was by far our best offensive lineman for years and years, our like go-to center. Right. And so we're gonna need some help there. As far as the 2 we could pick from, right? Mason Graham, Michigan, or he's defensive lineman. I'm sorry.
It would be Campbell and Membao.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of good things about Membao. He's one of those players that's like leaked up until the top 10, if you know what I'm saying. As mock drafts go and the teams assess fits, there's always players that come up further and further and higher in the draft. So I've seen some mock drafts where we take Membao. I just don't think, I think we'll take the more consistent guy. Yeah. We've had workouts with Will Campbell. We've talked to Will Campbell. We've done interviews. And we know that's, as I said, the top 4 are pretty consensus. And I would say Will Campbell could fall into that top 4. So we definitely need help on the offensive line.
Yes.
As long as he can stay on sides before the plays starts. We've had a lot of false start issues with our offensive line in the past couple of years. And so
I agree.
I think he's the best available player. It's not ideal for us. I would obviously rather Travis Hunter. I'll be praying for it on the draft day. I think this will still be the same odds going into draft day, but
yeah. Well, Will Campbell, from what I've done, just fantastic. Has all the traits of a cornerstone tackle. There's concern about his arm length. I don't see that being as big of a problem if he's playing on the outside. Membao is a bit more interesting. He's more of a move around the line kind of guy. He's played all kinds of positions. He's great in motion. I can see him potentially moving to guard if that's something that the Patriots could be interested in, but I don't think they pass up on Will Campbell here. Just take the guy who's most likely to be your cornerstone tackle. I think Will Campbell's a slam dunk pick.
New offensive coordinator, too, and Josh McDaniels, who I'm really, really confident on. Obviously, he knows the Patriot way. He's going to bring in all this stuff when with Vrabel, a player who played for the Patriots for so long. I think an offensive guy like this that they can work with is great for them.
Not the most exciting pick for the average viewer, but I think this is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, Will Campbell will go to the Patriots. And following up is the Jaguars, and I think this is another slam dunk pick here. If you're in agreement with me, there's a defensive tackle out of Michigan named Mason Graham, who I did my research on him yesterday afternoon. He is just an absolute game wrecker. If you watch his film from Michigan, you can't even really see many highlights because he just gets double teamed all the time. He's an absolute menace. He is a deep bag of pass rushing moves. He gets in there, man. What do you think about Mason Graham to the Jaguars?
I think this is like the best fit of the top 5, maybe the best fit of the top 10. If you look there as well, like their top team need is defensive tackle, and he's the best defensive tackle in the draft. Every single mock draft that I've seen has him going number 5 to the Jaguars. Yeah. They've probably done extensive research on him. They've done their interviews. They most likely like him if all these mock draft sites and like experts are hearing that they would like to draft him.
Yeah.
So I think he's the perfect fit for them. I can't see them drafting really anyone else.
Yeah, no, this is really just a slam dunk pick. I think Graham, the only slight worry I have, I think he needs to put on a tiny bit more weight. He is slightly undersized for a defensive tackle. He's I think, listed at 296. Yes, he's at 296 pounds. But you can't get better than Mason Graham here. The Jaguars are in a great spot to pick up on what I'd argue is their biggest need.
That's always something you can do in the offseason. And as you go through it, like I would say, obviously, all of these top 5 guys are definitely not perfect NFL fits. They still have weaknesses in their game that they can refine as the years go.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just the draft, isn't it? Like, all these guys are raw out of college, and we'll see what the teams can do with them.
I mean, tackle is such an important commodity on both sides of the ball. You can't pass this up here. So we're going to go with Mason Graham to the Jaguars.
Yep. And then you can start this next pick because I know you're very excited for this one.
You might have seen this pick in any and every mock draft you've ever read. You have very likely seen Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders. And I want to take a minute to explain to you why, if you're unsure of why. I mean, Ashton Jeanty had a historic season. I think he had over 2,500 all-purpose yards, maybe even just pure rushing yards at Boise State this year. Single-handedly carried them to college football players. If you want to talk a little bit about that after I talk a little bit about what he's about. He is the modern reimagining of Marshawn Lynch. He is incredibly fast. He dishes out punishment in open space. He has an absurdly high motor. He's one of the best pure runners we've seen in years, probably since Saquon Barkley in 2018. And I know a lot of people are talking about how weak the receiver room is in Vegas, and I know they want to have targets for Geno Smith, but I think Ashton Jeanty, not only based on value, is the best pick here. I also think he's going to take a lot of stress off of Geno and allow him to kind of work, because they have some solid gadget guys in Vegas. They don't have a one right now, but I just don't think you could pass up Jeanty.
If there's anything that the Raiders, whether the Oakland Raiders or the Las Vegas Raiders, love, it's a sexy pick. This is the sexy pick. There's 3 teams that will, I would say, in the NFL, that always pick the sexy pick over maybe the best team fit. And I would say this is still a good team fit, but it's the Raiders, I would say it's the Steelers, and I would say it's the Bengals. Over the past couple of years, they've been the kind of, they want the name brand guy who's gonna push their team forward. I wouldn't say necessarily he's perfect for Vegas just because he's not like a showman or anything, but he'll do really well in a team that needs someone like that. In terms of like the college football playoff stuff, first off, in the regular season was the best player in college football. I think no questions asked. Best running back in years and years. I think there's the stat. I don't remember the exact numbers, but in terms of if you put like 7 players in the tackle box, he has 10 yards per carry. If you put 8 players in the tackle box, he has over 5 yards per carry. If you put 9 players in the tackle box, same thing.
It's incredible.
You can't stop him, right? Yeah. And so that's going to be a real problem. However, I will say the one I watched most intently of Ashton Jeanty live was the college football playoff game against Penn State, and his explosiveness really was kept in check, I would say, in that game. And that's scary maybe for the Raiders, wherever team takes him, because they know that those Penn State rushers are probably similar as it can get to the caliber of NFL rushers. And I'm not the kind of guy who's like, oh, it's Boise State, so they're playing like Mountain West teams, like,
right.
They're not playing the best teams in the world here. But like when you get that kind of gap in quality, I would say, against a team that's better, like Penn State, that's kind of where it gets a little bit concerning. But I think that being said, like, he was the best player in college football last season, and I can't see him going that far down the draft. I think this is a huge upside pick.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any chance Jeanty falls out of the top 10, to be entirely honest with you. He is an absurd talent at a position that's only gaining more value as the years go on. I don't think you could be wrong with a Jeanty pick here. So we're going to send Jeanty to the Raiders. Sorry, it's a very basic pick, but there's a reason why it's so heavily mocked. Now we're going to move to the Jets here. And there are a couple places that the Jets could go here. One spot could be Armand Membao out of Missouri, offensive tackle. We can also see the Jets looking at tight end out of Penn State, Tyler Warren, who's kind of a do-it-all gadget guy, great route runner, can kind of be that all-around receiving threat, maybe the next George Kittle. So what are you thinking, Alex? What do you think they decide between?
I mean, I think they're one of these teams that have a lot of team needs, and not all these players in the draft are gonna really do it for them. Like, there's a lot of these lower teams here in like the lottery picks per se. I know it's not the NBA draft, but the lottery picks who are really dealing with the struggle of this being a very weak draft class in comparison to past years. For my mock draft, I have Membao going to them. I've heard really great things about him. As I said, there's a lot of talk about maybe the Patriots picking them. They need help with offensive line. They dealt with their team need of a quarterback. They have Justin Fields now, who I have a lot of confidence in. They also have Jordan Travis as a backup, which a lot of people don't talk. I think he's still on the Jets now. I obviously kept up with the QB room to the point where of knowing all the backups, right? But he was great at Florida State. I think an offensive lineman will work for them. I don't see them going like beyond their needs in terms of that. Like as I said, it's a pretty weak draft class, and there might be someone in the later round they like better. So I'm going with Membao.
I do think Membao is a great pick. I do think they take a long, hard look at Tyler Warren, who also gives some help on that blocking scheme. Gives Justin Fields a very reliable target in the flat, and also Tyler Warren loves to run up the seam, which he's very, very good at. And I feel like he could provide a lot of easy targets. So it's between Warren and Membao. We could just see the Jets taking the best guy off the board. So we'll go with Membao here.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see Warren slipping much further. I think he's viewed as the best receiver.
I think there are a lot of teams in this draft that want tight ends and will need tight ends, and there are a ton of good tight ends available. Like the the thing is, like, not an amazing draft class overall, but the amount of tight ends there are is crazy.
Yes.
We'll talk about
there
our favorite boy. I don't think he's going the first round, but
going
after we're done
round.
with this first round mock draft,
he's not going to the first round. If we have time, we'll talk about the leader in receiving yards and receptions, Harold Fannett Jr.
Oh boy.
So, we're gonna send Armand Membao to the Jets, and we're going to move on to the Panthers here.
Yes.
Panthers need cornerback, though they did lock up J.C. Horn on a humongous contract. They can improve O-line. There's really nowhere that the Panthers are extremely locked up except, I'd say, defensive tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I do think they need help on the edge. So they could look at a guy like Jalon Walker here. They could reach for one of the other rushers like Mykel Williams, Shamar Stewart, or they could also look at Will Johnson at corner to put aside on the outside, aside from J.C. Horn. What do you think?
I think, as you said, their biggest team need is corner. There's a good corner still here. Will Johnson. Michigan have had great experience in the past couple of years, like training DBs. Sanders still for the Commanders has been amazing. Shout out Everett, Massachusetts, where Mike Sanders still's from. But yeah, like Will Johnson, obviously, like these big programs, they know how to get their guys. Will Johnson, like, won a national championship with Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a great fit for Carolina, and obviously they have a ton of team needs, as you addressed. There's nowhere where they could really go wrong with this pick. As a team like that, they can go anywhere. But I went with Will Johnson in my mock.
Will Johnson is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but he did have a flurry of injuries in his last year. I think, even though he's ranked as a higher prospect, it doesn't really take into account the massive injuries. I'm leaning a bit more towards an edge threat here, potentially Jalon Walker, who could kind of fill that. He could play middle linebacker. He can rush from the outside. He kind of lurk around an open space, kind of fill the hole that Frankie Louvu and Brian Burns are now, that they left there. So what do you want to go with here? What do you think?
Obviously my preference would be Will Johnson, but if you've done more extensive research on like the Panthers team needs, I'm fine with whatever.
I think Will Johnson slips a little bit further just because of injury. So let's go Jalon Walker here. Now we have a team that could really go anywhere. Shedeur Sanders is in play.
Correct.
I think this is one of his most likely landing spots. Tet McMillan is in play, though there is question if he really deserves to be taken this high or if that's just a positional draft pick. They could also go offensive line. There's really there are a whole lot of needs in New Orleans. So what are you thinking here?
Obviously new head coach Kellen Moore. I don't think he wants to take as big of a risk, a big like huge swing coming right in to this team. I haven't seen the last time like the Saints front office has taken like a big name guy necessarily in terms of that. So I don't necessarily think they're thinking of quarterback. I think they'd rather pick someone with more experience in the league. They're sticking with Carr, I think, still. I think that's their guy. I think they go with someone like Tet McMillan.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since they had a dominant receiver. Michael Thomas has had those injury issues for years and years. Tet McMillan, you saw mock drafts like earlier this year that had him like top 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he has that upside. He's one of those upside wide receivers in this draft. So I think he might be the best player that's available again. And I think they'll need a receiver. They need explosiveness on the offense, and it's an upside pick without having the risk of someone like Shedeur, who's,
No, yeah. I mean, receivers are a huge need. Derek Carr is definitely capable of being a successful quarterback. They just need more threats for sure. Tet McMillan is not the most explosive guy in the class, I will say. He's definitely the most likely to become a wide receiver one. He's fantastic at the catch point. Super huge guy. I think he's at 6'5". He doesn't really beat guys downfield, though. He's not the fastest guy. There's potential of an upside pick in Matthew Golden here, who I think presents the highest upside of any receiver. They could also go, if they're looking for upside on the other side of the ball, they could go Will Johnson. I think you're right. The Saints don't really like to take swings. Tet McMillan, in my opinion, doesn't deserve to really be drafted top 10. But, I mean, in the draft, you want to try to balance positional need and actual value. I think Tet McMillan is a very solid pick for the Saints here. And you're right. I think they avoid the big names.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where it gets interesting because
Yes.
in this like 10 to 15 pick range, especially this 10 to 11 and spots Bears and Niners who don't really have pressing needs or at least for the Bears it's because they've kind of filled a lot of stuff. For the Niners it's because they have too many spots to fill. This is where we could see a potential trade for Shedeur Sanders.
I would call these teams, there's the win now mentality.
Yes.
I think these are like win soon
Yeah.
mentality. They want guys to fulfill their roster spots and like they want guys who are championship minded, but they're picking like under 15th in the draft.
Yeah.
They're these teams that they need urgent kind of team needs, but there might not be the players that can fill those holes in terms of pushing them to those high playoff seeds and high playoff spots.
We've seen the Bears be very greedy in recent history with their picks. They've taken a lot of. I mean, Adunze last year was just a pure not a value pick, just for pure greed for Caleb Williams threats. Could we see them going again with another receiver? Likely not.
No.
I think they're starting to shift more. That being said, I do think they are more likely to keep their pick because there are guys like Kelvin Banks here. Kelvin Banks is a stud on the outside. He's another cornerstone for that offensive line. They can also just select something to help their edge alongside Montez Sweat. So I think they go with either Kelvin Banks here, or they could look at like Mykel Williams in Georgia. What do you think?
Well, the first thing I'll say about the Bears is what I've seen. They've been calling them three-peat off-season champions.
Yeah.
The offseason they had last year with drafting people, the offensive line needs that they fulfilled this year, which I thought was really good. I thought that was something that the Patriots needed to do this year. And then 2 years ago, obviously, the trade with the Panthers to swap the picks. I think this is another pick I struggled on, too, because there are like a wide range of team needs, as I said, with these next couple picks. I have Malachi Starks. He's predicted to go like way lower. I think he's a high upside guy in the defense. I think there's obviously as we keep saying, there's a lot of ways they can go with this. So I think your guess might be as good as mine, and your guess might be better than mine.
I think Malachi Starks is fantastic.
Yes.
But I do think they will eventually they want to just make a slam dunk pick. Don't think you could go wrong with really any of the edge rushers in this class. It's a very strong edge class, at least compared to other positions. I think they go with Mykel Williams here. Now,
the Niners are on the clock.
The Niners.
I think I'm getting a phone call from the what is that? I think it's from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, interesting.
I think we might be getting a trade here. I think we might get a pick swap with these two teams.
The conditions, because we just have to
involve it with more because they're gonna reject the trade.
You
can reject trades.
No.
Yeah, do it from the Niners' point of view.
It's difficult to get trades to go through. But while I try to figure this out, talk about who the Steelers are going to select here.
They think this is a fleece deal. This app. I think the Niners, they have a ton of team needs, but I don't think any of these guys in the draft are doing something for them where it's worth holding on to this pick where they maybe can get a player in return for the Steelers trade. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are the one team, they need a quarterback in this draft and they want it high, and they go to the top 10. They're like, how is this guy still there? Let's make a trade at 11 for Shedeur Sanders.
Got it.
From Colorado the trade finally went through
Yeah.
for Alex. Obviously, you guys can't see, but Alex struggled to make a trade work there. Maybe they trade a player along with it as well.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
I could totally see. I don't know who from the Saints, the Niners would like particularly want for their team needs, but it would depend on the day. But I could totally see Shedeur Sanders going here to the Saints. I could see them still getting someone like Rodgers and having someone like Shedeur come in and having that like 2 quarterback set they kind of had last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is where he goes. I think.
No, I could
here.
totally see the Steelers selecting another quarterback later in this class, having them kind of compete. Shedeur is not the most exciting prospect, but what he offers is a whole lot of consistency. He's very accurate. He is very poised. He showed a lot of great traits at Colorado. Doesn't really appear to have any like electric talents. Like Cam Ward has an insane arm, and so the other guys in this class are really good at some things. He's just great across the board, and I really don't think you could go wrong with this pick. Shedeur Sanders is, in my opinion, is best on a team that already has tools around him. I think he'll be able to succeed there, and I think he'll be great.
Well, you always get too. I know this is obviously not the biggest strength of Shedeur Sanders, but with a guy who's in the NFL family, he knows how to be in a locker room.
Yeah,
he's had experience with that. So
yeah, no.
He's in an NFL family that'll do him well.
I totally agree. I mean, there's intangibles here that you've got to be excited about, even if he's not the most athletically and technically promising quarterback.
Yep.
All right, so we have the Steelers trade up in this draft. They send a future third to swap picks. The Niners, so they get a little more draft capital, move down the board,
and I think in real life they'd actually get a player. Obviously, we can't do that in this.
This is just to get the trade to go through. In real life, they probably give up a lot.
Which would be a huge trade. Two huge like franchises in the NFL.
This would be exciting to see.
I would love it.
And now we have the Cowboys, and there is one player here who I think is very, very interesting to take a look at, because the Cowboys, not the most level-headed franchise. They're kind of stuck in a purgatory with Jerry Jones, and I think what Jerry Jones is always looking for are just picks that keep up the illusion that the team is competing, which they may very well may be. So I think they look at a guy like Matthew Golden here, who presents some of the highest upside in this entire draft. He is absurdly explosive. He reminds me a little bit of Tyreek Hill. Because Tyreek Hill, despite his size, very aggressive player, very competitive at the catch point, and just explosive with the ball in his hands. I think they look at Matthew Golden here. Are there any other positions you think the Cowboys could look at?
I just don't necessarily see them going receiver.
Really?
I think they have a decent enough receiver room where they're not like, we want a guy like this, and there may be more urgent team needs. I see them going edge. I have them going with Shamar Stewart at edge. Other than Will Johnson, the best available defensive player, we're still passing on Will Johnson, which I don't know necessarily what the team needs are for Cowboys. They could use a cornerback too. They could go with someone like Will Johnson who'd still be on the board. So I'd say either of those two guys. Obviously, some of the best and more, they'd always don't pick those guys, but I think those two.
Yeah, I think
those two.
Shamar Stewart's a great pick. I think it's definitely the more level-headed pick. We could see them make it. I've also seen a lot of mock drafts predict Omarion Hampton out of UNC, which last year there was a surprise running back that went in, high points. As a mock draft, we're going to try to keep it as realistic as possible. The pick is not realistic. It could definitely happen. So on draft night, keep an eye out for that there could potentially be a running back or two that, jump their way into the first round, even though they're not really there. We'll go with Shamar Stewart here. Though keep in mind, Cowboys could go with a crazy RV pick here, and
a lot of people were saying Genty too early on in the draft.
Yes,
obviously he'd be taken by that point.
His value is only increased. And Will Johnson, fantastic player as he is, we saw last year cornerbacks really did not have that much value in the draft. That could change this year. It should change, but we'll see what happens. So we're gonna go with Shamar Stewart here. Just go alongside Micah Parsons. Can't go wrong with that. Now the Dolphins, very, very interesting. Another team that also likes their commodity picks.
Yes.
Not really a big value draft.
Correct.
I have a very close friend who is a Dolphins fan, so I'm very tuned into their draft needs and what the fan base certainly needs, and what they're hoping the office and the coaching staff are turning towards is offensive line, which has been a consistent problem. It's been truly terrible. It's been a factor to Tua's constant injury, and they believe he can be their guy, but if they really do that, and from the words of Mike McDaniel, they really need to build around him. So I think they go with, as much as they love to go with a guy like Tyler Warren here. They did have some success with Jonnu Smith here. I think they have to go for their biggest need and draft Kelvin Banks.
I have Tyler Warren here, as you just addressed. They love their commodity picks.
Yes.
And I don't necessarily see that changing. Maybe if Mike McDaniel, as you said, has an impact on who they pick, I think they would pick Tyler Warren. Kind of just seeing that he might be the best player available here. Jonnu Smith has definitely been inconsistent. Someone who supports a team that used to have Jonnu Smith. But I mean, yeah, they do have a good amount of team needs across the board. So
yeah,
I could see them going with someone else too.
Between me, I think they're stuck between the two. Do they go with Tyler Warren? Would still be fantastic for the team, but I really do feel like if they're a smart franchise, they'll pick Kelvin Banks. But if they continue to indulge in kind of the positions that McDaniels covets, like running back, fast running backs especially. So even as mock drafters, I feel like we're kind of stuck here. So what do you think we should go with?
I'll
leave it up to you.
I'm gonna say Tyler Warren.
Okay, we'll go Tyler Warren.
I obviously don't think that's the best fit, but
it's
I
not.
think
But is it the best fit for the Dolphins? Potentially, yes. Okay, now we have the Colts. Colts have a couple needs listed on Pro Football Sports Network. Their highest need is tight end. I know you are.
And we just picked a tight end.
You are very high on Colts. They are probably very upset if Tyler Warren doesn't go there. He absolutely goes here.
Yes.
So they could look at Colston Loveland. What I will say, Colston Loveland is practically a receiver in a tight end body. He shouldn't be drafted with the expectation of developing into a do-it-all tight end. He simply doesn't have a big enough frame. He's not that much of a blocker, really. And the amount of snaps at Michigan for Colston Loveland that came on the outside, you would think he's a receiver that just sometimes moves to the slot. So they could look at Colston Loveland here. I could also just see them taking, best offensive lineman on the board. They could look at a guard like Booker. Kelvin Banks is slipping later than I think he should. What do you think they could go with here?
I have them picking Colston Loveland. I said as the upside of them needing tight end, but I mean they might just be so frustrated with not being able to draft a tight end the pick before. I could see them going with someone like Banks as an offensive lineman. But the line of the Colts is still competent.
Still
I guess still solid, right? So it just depends. I think I had more of a say in the last one, so I think we go with Banks here.
Go with Banks, or if they appear to be strong at tackle, I could see them just going with an edge rusher here, just to pair it alongside Latu. Mike Green is on the board. There's also the linebacker Jahad Campbell that they could put next to Zaire Franklin. I think Jahad Campbell could go here. He's incredible in open space. He's kind of a leader for this defense. I think Jahad Campbell's a great pick here.
Okay, I really like him too. I have him going later to the Niners, which would still be a high enough for him to go. But yeah,
I think we go Jahad Campbell.
Me too. I like that pick.
Now Falcons, I think there is a very clear need of defense here. This defense is getting old, and they're in desperate need of injecting youth into this defense. They have all manner of defensive needs on Pro Football Sports Network. Their top 5 listed team needs are all defense. I think they're probably very upset that Shamar Stewart is gone, because I have a feeling they would really appreciate that big presence on the outside. Mike Green is on the board. He does have some character issues in question right now. I'm not entirely tuned into that. He's great at stopping the run, which they could definitely use help with. They can also look at a guy like Derek Harmon, who's very raw right now. He's not going to be a starter on day one, but he has an incredible motor, super powerful on the interior. What do you think?
I have them picking Derek Harmon, as you just mentioned. Although I will say, if Will Johnson is still here available, like they have a need at DB, I think that's someone who they'd be glad to take. I think their organization has shifted a lot more into taking team needs and what they need. So I think
let's go Will Johnson.
Yeah, he's projected top 10.
Have to speed up a tiny bit.
Yeah.
All right, let's go Will Johnson, the Falcons, and now we bring up Cardinals, another team with heavy needs. Pro Football Sports Network has edge listed as their top need. Totally agree with that. Defensive tackle. They could use a receiver on the other end. I think they're fine.
Yeah, I think
offense really.
I made a little cool pick here. I went with Matthew Golden. I think that's
a fun pick.
Really fun for them to have receivers zooming down the field and Kyler just chucking it from the pocket. But
obviously
that one's
very
just
fun
like
pick
for the. for the excitement.
I do
factor.
think edge is where they go here.
Okay.
So Mike Green is on the board. He's the top pick. Do they care about character issues? Maybe. Very, very realistic scenario that he falls due to the issues, but
Yeah.
he was very highly rated. I think we go Mike Green here.
Okay.
Now, if you want to go Matthew going to the Bengals, that would be crazy. They do like big names though. Also have a high need of edge. Could very much use help on the interior. And funnily enough, there's a guy who kind of fills both of those, kind of holes. Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, very intriguing prospect. Really looks like an edge rusher that just plays nose tackle. He's very strong, super high motor, great dude. And you kind of get the sense, I don't know if there are many guys in the NFL that do this, but you kind of get the sense you could move him around the line. You can have him rush from the outside. You can have him kind of go at the nose tackle even if you wanted. Because he doesn't really appear to have that big of a frame, even though I think he's listed at like 6'4", 296. I think Walter Nolan is a guy they could look at here.
Yeah, I would say anyone on the defense. As of right now, they kind of have that Swiss cheese defense with all players retiring or, leaving them. So I had Jelon Walker, who obviously probably won't fall all the way over here. And they don't necessarily need a linebacker, but they need anyone on the defense. So they'll probably go with the best available guy with the highest upside too. They're, as I said, they're in favor of the sexy pick. So.
We'll say Derek Harmon slips a little bit further because he's pure D tackle. Walter Nolan can move around. That kind of fills two holes here.
Yep.
Bengals are prioritizing re-signing players on offense. That means they're gonna look in the draft for defense.
Right.
So we're gonna go with Walter Nolan here out of Ole Miss. Seahawks. Now, if you want to get crazy, I do think they just go Kelvin Banks here. Kelvin Banks slipped so far. I think they just go with him. There are some receiver picks here that they could happen. I think they're confident in JSN. Offensive line has been a problem. I think they just pick Banks here and just take the value.
Yeah, that's who I have in my mock draft. We have a consensus
Awesome.
pick in 18. How about that?
Well, we had one at the start too.
But all the way at 18. Like we have the ones to start are all pretty obvious. But going down all the way to 18, they need
Kelvin Banks will definitely. I don't. There's a real chance he goes top 10. Offensive line is so highly valued, but there's a chance he slips. That just because of teams taking positional need over value, and Kelvin Banks slam dunk pick here for the Seahawks. A lot of people are questioning what they're doing. They're kind of reinventing themselves. Why not just pick up a cornerstone tackle in the process? Sure. Now the Buccaneers, I think, if had things gone differently, they would be looking at linebacker here as Lavonte Davis not getting any younger. But now I think they look at secondary. And so there's a couple options here. They could go Jahdae Barron out of Texas. They could also look at two of the more fantastic safety prospects in this draft in Malachi Starks and Nick Emenwari. Are kind of different ends of the spectrum of what you kind of want in a safety. I think Emenwari is more likely to be picked between the two because they've already got remind me of his name. Antoine Winfield. And Emenwari is kind of more of like an imposing, play in the box, Kyle Hamilton type of safety. What do you think they go with here?
I think I had them going edge, and I have them going Mike Green. Think about it. When's the last time the Buccaneers cared about character issues? Their two best edges, when they won the Super Bowl, Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul. And Jason Pierre-Paul blew his finger off with fireworks. Okay? So
I don't know if you can classify that as a character issue. But if you're interested, if you think the Bucs would be interested in edge and you want character issues, there actually happens to be another. Character issue. James Pierce Jr.
Wonderful.
Who has definitely slipped down the board. He's very explosive, 6'5", 245, and I could see them going Pierce here, who's a little different. Mike Green's more of a run stopper. Pierce is more of a pure edge rusher.
Yeah.
You think Pierce here?
I think
that's a totally fair
pick. They probably
pick.
go edge. So
let's go James Pierce Jr.
Okay.
Now, let's get interesting. The Broncos love their commodity picks.
Yes.
They just draft for position, man. Matthew Golden is available here. Well, now the problem is the problem is the Broncos have a lot of guys who are maybe not as good as Matthew Golden, but play the same role.
Yeah.
What the Broncos would love if Ted McMillan fell. But they can also look at a guy like Emeka Egbuka. Don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Who's more of just a pure route runner, very stable X receiver. They could also look at Colston Loveland here, who despite not being a blocking tight end, very tall threat. They would love that in that offense. they could also get very greedy and reach into the depths of day 2 picks and pick a running back. Well, there's so many places they could go here. I do think they're locked in on offense though. They want to build.
Okay, I had them taking Jahdae Barron, but I think offense I could totally see them taking. And Colston Loveland still being available. You know I love my Broncos tight end. Shout out Adam Troutman. But he's not a starter really.
I think they would be excited to get their hands on Colston Loveland. It breaks my heart that Colston Loveland can't go a little bit lower to the Chargers or the Rams, which I think he would be a much better fit for. But like we said, the Broncos just want to build around Bo Nix. Colston Loveland's here, slam dunk pick. And now the 49ers are now at 21 because they traded with the Steelers. A lot of needs here. They could go Derek Harmon. They just released Javon Hargrave, so there's a bit of a hole at defensive tackle here. They can also go secondary. They could go a guy like Jahdae Barron because Charvarius Ward is now he's on another team. I don't remember which one. I can't remember if he was like a Bronco or he's somewhere else. Yeah, that's just not not San Francisco. So they could go Jahdae Barron here. They could go edge. But I do think this is a defensive pick here. They lost a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they could look at receiver.
I had them taking Jahad Campbell. Obviously, we already took him. So, it's your prerogative at this point.
All right, we'll go with Jahdae Barron. I think they need to replenish on the outside. Charvarius Ward was fantastic.
And I had him go last year. Earlier.
Yeah, close enough, man. All right, Chargers. Now there's two very distinct options here. Derek Harmon. It fills a need. He maybe they don't need him to start immediately because they've got some other strong positions on defense. He's super high motor, or we're giving Justin Herbert a speedy receiver who could get down the field in Matthew Golden. Great hands despite his frame. Maybe this is the consistent target for Herbert. Herbert can let it unleash. I really like the fit of Golden in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think they need receiving help. They lost all their offensive weapons, and I thought they were going to be a really bad team last year, and they, Ladd McConkey stepped it up. They succeeded with a receiver. Why not pair him with another guy?
Yeah, him and McConkey definitely very similar in frame, but they did bring back Mike Williams. I think you'll be able to kind of have a levels threat there. You have McConkey in the short, Golden intermediary. Mike Williams just running streaks on every play because that's all they do. I think Matthew Golden is a slam dunk pick here. Love Matthew Golden, by the way. Now, another team that has a similar issue to the Broncos, which is a lot of good wide receivers, really not any great ones. And I could see them looking at a player like Emeka Egbuka here, who is just pure just route running, just a very stable wide receiver one. He's not the most explosive guy in the draft, but he is very, very knowledgeable. He's a high IQ player. I think he could step in and be like the guy that they want.
I just think the Packers have a very oversaturated wide receiver room at this point, and I wouldn't see them going even further than that. You know what I'm saying? So I think edge, as they said, is their top team need. There are a ton of great edges that are late first rounder guys who are around here. I could see someone like Donovan Ezeraiku from BC going to them. Shut up, BC. Let's go, BC. I don't necessarily know if he'll go this high. I have James Pierce going around here too, who's another edge in the draft. But there are a ton of guys like around this section. I think James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee might be the best one to go with for the Packers here. We already took him.
That's okay. That's no worries. I think
if there are any other edges available other than,
Scorton is there. He's not didn't have too much production in college, if I'm not mistaken. Had a very solid combine. But they could go Ezeraku, who's definitely gained a lot of traction as the draft processes go forward.
He's going up to a first rounder. I think he'll be a first rounder, maybe not here. But I just don't see them taking a receiver. Yeah. That's the only thing.
I think it's very possible. I understand why logically, why would they take it when they have like six wide receiver twos?
Exactly.
I do think they're in desperate need of an alpha though. But we'll go Donovan Ezeraku. Hopefully we're pronouncing that correctly, yes. Donovan.
Definitely listening.
Now, Vikings struggling at safety. Harrison Smith is getting old. I think his heir is Nick Emenwari, absolute athletic freak. The Vikings love to move guys around. They had one of the most impressive oppressive and impressive defenses last year behind Brian Flores. They love guys who move around, can kind of play different spots on the field. Emma Moore can play over top. He can move into the box. Absolute athletic menace, humongous frame. Reminds me of Kyle Hamilton a little bit. I think Emma Moore is a slam dunk pick here.
You don't see them, though, going with someone like Malachi Starks. Like, I have Malachi Starks at 10 in this draft. Safety is a team need for them.
No, it is.
I would love for them to go with another defensive player. Like, that would be, I mean, obviously, Emma Moore is a safety.
I think they're both fantastic. Starks didn't have as strong as a combine. They factor that into it heavily. Emma Moore, I think they're really excited about. Either one they pick is a slam dunk pick.
Yes.
I think Emma Moore is a little more the Vikings' defensive style.
I'm fine with that. Would go great with Brian Flores.
All right.
Love him as a DC.
All right.
Glad he stayed.
Texans. I think offensive line is very likely here.
Yes.
They've been completely reconstructing.
Yeah.
Josh Simmons, who is still here, who has the opportunity to go much, much higher in this draft because he was really fantastic before he had an ACL tear in October. Really not too many other offensive linemen. They could also look at guard here, which is also a team need. So I could see them going Josh Simmons. I think that's very likely.
I have them going Josh Simmons as well.
Josh Simmons, let's just lock it in,
and
man.
is there a chance also at Ohio State they'd play with C.J. Stroud? So he has experience with him behind the line?
That's
look
definitely,
at that.
That's definitely I'm not sure if they played together, but most of these guys played at least 2 years at college. So let's go Josh Simmons here.
The Rams. I have something different than when I did this mock draft.
Okay.
I have a very high upside guy who I think could move up the draft these next 2 weeks. Luther Burden III. He is one of my favorite 3 guys in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
He's the first one I've mentioned, obviously. Coming into this year was going to be one of the best receivers in the draft. People knew he was going to be a top 10 guy. That's why Mizzou were ranked so high. Had a little bit of regressive here, but not anything crazy. Ran a 4.41 in the combine.
Yeah.
Great receiver. Great option for anyone. He plays in the slot. I see the Rams maybe need a replacement for Cooper Kupp. He definitely has more refinement that he needs in his game, but such a high upside guy that can go here. I'd say of all the receivers, he definitely has the biggest discrepancy between his upside and like how he is actually as a player.
He's got a low floor, you'd say, but
I'd say he's got a low floor for being like 31 or maybe outside the first round.
Okay.
I'd see them picking some guy like this.
Okay. I like that pick. I think he'll complement Puka and Devontae well. Just give Safford more weapons. Defense is super young, and they still have a couple more years to complete. Love that pick. Let's go Luther Burden. Now the Ravens. Ravens are probably in love with Nick Emenwari because they have Kyle Hamilton. That being said, I think Starks is the better complement. They could go either Starks or they could look for a corner here. Savon Revel is still here, who's more of a quick, athletic corner. I think they could look at him. They could look at Morrison from Notre Dame. As much as they like Malachi Starks, their secondary was a disaster. There's zero chance they leave this draft without a first or second round pick going to corner or safety.
Yeah, I think Malachi Starks. A lot of the front offices will be like, who's the best guy available? He's the best guy available.
Let's go with Starks. He could play in the slot if needed. They could potentially give him reps outside. I don't see it happening. He could play over top alongside Kyle Hamilton.
And they'll be thrilled to get a top 20 guy, maybe top 15.
Yes. Starks falls a little bit because of positional value and didn't have the best combine. Right. Fantastic player. Now we go Lions. I think Lions are a very simple team to read. I think they're going to go trenches. I think they want another edge rusher, to be honest. I think Nick Scorton's right there. He can play alongside, Aiden Hutchinson. Think it's a slam dunk. I think they put it in immediately. Who's the best edge rusher on the board? Just take it. Put him alongside Aiden Hutchinson. That's just what they're about in Detroit.
I had James Pierce going here. Obviously, we already took him. I've seen a lot of
great fit, by the way.
Yes, I've seen a lot of mock drafts having Ezra going here too. I think I was a little bit biased for him going to the Packers because BC guys going to the Packers. AJ Dillon. So I think obviously they go edge.
Scoring, slam dunk. All right, Commanders. Commanders have strong defensive needs, in my opinion, and I think they could look at a guy like Derek Harmon here. They do have Deron Payne, who's kind of stepping into what could be a breakout season next year. I think that's the way to go. They could also go corner because Lattimore. There's questions about his durability. They kind of want to improve that room behind him. I think it could go Savon Revel. Who's very athletic. He can eventually, successor to Lattimore, play alongside Mike Sainer still, who's fantastic. I think they could go Savon Revel here, just given they'd probably love Malachi Starks or Emma Warren if they fell. I don't see that happening.
I have Emanwari, and obviously if Malachi Starks, the Ravens don't take him, they're taking him. They definitely need improvements in the secondary. As long as it's someone who's a secondary can, push them forward. They definitely do need help on defense. Yeah. Obviously, you saw a lot of runners and rushers getting past the defensive line of the Commanders and just going on.
Yeah.
That's a team need for them.
I think if there's better edge rushers there, they'll take those. But Savon Revel, incredible story, by the way. Yeah. If you haven't read about Savon Revel's story about how he became a now hopefully first round prospect, you'll go ahead and read that on ESPN. Last 3 picks here, so we're gonna try to move through these. Bills been locking up a lot of their young talent. I think they go with Derek Harmon here. He's fallen so low. They could use help on that defensive line. They like these gritty guys who are just, and Derek Harmon is raw right now, but he's super gritty. I think they go Derek Harmon here.
Yeah. I have Luther Burden III because this is the danger with doing late night mock drafts. You forget, Luther Burden III. Luther Burden. Good slot receiver. Do the Bills have a slot receiver? No, they don't have a good slot receiver at all. Khalil Shakir, who's he? But yeah, no.
They could also look at Egbuka here, but I think they just run it out.
Yeah.
And improve that defense. All right.
Sure.
Let's go Derek Harmon here. Now the Chiefs love their guys with raw talent because they just want to try to mold them into pieces for the system. They could look at a guy like Tyleik Williams here, who's super super athletic, very raw. You never count them out adding more receivers to their room. Listed, their biggest need is defensive tackle. I think Tyleik Williams. They just go with a guy who's athletic and hope they can.
I have
their system.
Him in this mock draft. I actually have Tyleik Williams. I just think too, like it could be a coin flip of them taking a receiver. They might think that
they could.
They love the skill position guys, or like early, because obviously this is their earliest pick that they've had the past couple of years. And I think it's a coin flip, and I think it lands on whatever side Tyleik Williams is on.
Yeah, I think Tyleik Williams. They could look at receiver, but there's also lots. The receiver market is beat right now. It is so low. The receivers have such low value, and they could look at it in trade. Tyreek Hill has been signaling for a trade recently, or at least showing signs. Keep an eye on that. And then we leave my Philadelphia Eagles. So what Howie Roseman is thinking here is he's going to look at the board and he's going to see if there are any major fallers. And there doesn't really appear to be. In a real draft, there are going to be fallers, and that's what the Eagles are going to look for. Is there a player that's worth taking here? If not, what I'm going to propose is that what I will say is the Eagles could take a player like Kenneth Grant, replace Milton Williams in the trenches. But what I think is most likely to happen is that the Eagles are going to accept a large amount of picks for a team to trade back into the first round and select Jackson Dart. We don't have time to figure out what amount of picks would it take for Philadelphia to trade back because it's kind of a wonky trade. Teams we could see trading back into the first round for a Jackson Dart or a Jalen Milroe, who I personally am a huge fan of. Giants are in play there. In fact, I think it makes more sense for the Giants to trade back into the first round, take one of those guys that hopefully falls like Jackson Dart, and then have him learn behind some of the other guys. What do you see any other like specific team that could look at trading back for one of these guys?
No, I have the Giants taking Jackson Dart, but I also think that they're gonna wait until the second round.
I think the Eagles trade out of the first. The Giants jump up, take their guy, and they give up a healthy bit of picks in the process because they're just trying to guarantee that they have their guy.
I think they pick here. I think there might be a little bit of bias from you. Oh, we just won the Super Bowl. We don't need anyone. Because I would really like my cousin, Benjamin Morrison, to be a first-round pick. Shout out Ben Morrison. That is my cousin's name. And I could see him going 32 to the Eagles. I don't know what it will do if you actually, I guess you can. Oh.
It didn't work.
Let's just go with Benjamin Morrison.
Let's go with Benjamin Morrison. Okay, but be ready for the Eagles to potentially trade out of the first round. And that is our mock draft.
Yeah, the two guys outside the first round that I'd like to shout out quickly. Obviously, Jackson Dart. I think he'll be a giant. I think he'll go early in the second round. I think they see the upside in that. I really wanted him to be a first round pick, but I just don't see any other team picking a quarterback in the first round. And the other guy, our boy, the leading receiver in college football last year from Bowling Green State University, Harold Fannin Jr.
Need to put some respect on his name.
Yes, we do need to put respect. There's a chance he's the best wide receiver or tight end that comes out of this draft class. He is a dominant guy. He can block for you. He can catch for you. He can do everything.
Yeah, he's great.
Shades of maybe Gronk, Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah.
Maybe the Patriots take him. I don't think so. I think maybe he's a Panther. Panthers do need have some needs at tight end. Maybe they, I don't know, go third round. They just got a guy from Coastal Carolina. They got a Coastal Carolina basketball player who they're going to convert into a tight end. I don't know if you heard about this.
Nah.
But I think Dave Canales would love a tight end who could also block like Harold Fannin. I think he'll maybe go third round to the Panthers. And I'm really high on this guy. Put it on the record at 11:10 a.m. on April 9th, 2025
Alex Morrison
declared that Harold Fannin Jr. will be the steal of this draft.
I think that's great. I could see him going to the Eagles, who are potentially looking to move off Goddard. That would be very much excite me to take a look at him in the second or third round. I'll just give you guys one person who I think we should keep an eye on: Quinshawn Judkins out of Ohio State, who is kind of getting devalued because he was out of the top 4 kind of consensus running back prospects in this draft. Another one is from Ohio State, Trevion Henderson. They shared the backfield last year. So his stats don't jump off the page, but if you watch his film, he's insanely fast. You don't really see any other running backs in the league anymore that are explosive at the snap like he is. He just lines up 10 yards behind and just bursts through. He's super twitchy, really fantastic. I think out of anybody who's not named Ashton Genty, he has the highest chance to become a genuine running back one in this league, and I think he's fantastic. He's not getting enough appreciation.
He's like a little Genty. He has a lot more movement. Yeah. But he has that same downside too, where every time he competed against a high-level Big Ten defensive line, they kind of were able to quell his strengths. Yeah. But again, that's the downside with Genty, who we have going number 6.
Yeah. So you gotta hope NFL competition changes a little bit, but I think this guy's special. Mm-hmm. So. That is our mock draft. Thank you guys for tuning into the SBA podcast.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
In 2 weeks, we'll hope to see some of these picks come true.
Yeah, hopefully every single one is exactly how it predicted
exactly how it occurs.
It is exactly the way in which we said it. Everything will happen. There'll be that exact Steelers 49ers trade, exactly how it happens. They'll be called right on there, just like I did, and it'll be perfect. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, guys.